Season 1 of Invincible just ended with Invincible vs. Omni-Man, rounding off a perfect first step for the adaptation of one of my personal favorite comic books. However, when I say adaptation, I mean it in a little bit more of a looser sense than shows like JoJo's or My Hero would do. Those shows kind of leaning more towards a one-to-one adaptation, perfect comic to screen. Instead, the show leans a little bit closer to The Walking Dead, which keeps main occurrences and does whatever it wants in between. Instead, this show takes whatever plot lines it wants from the first 37 issues of the show and shoves them in between issues 7 and 11. Just like that one restaurant. It's not a restaurant. This strategy was, in part, done because they wanted to make Omni-Man vs. Invincible the final episode of the season. I mean, it's a big event. You can't exactly end a show with what would have been the normal thing. I don't know, Doc fucking Seismic jerking off into a cup. That doesn't really work. Of course, in order to do something like this, where the ending is supposed to happen way earlier, a lot of changes gotta happen. And a lot of changes gotta happen for this type of comic book being adapted to show. And today, I'm going to explain to you every single one of these major changes made from Invincible, the comic, to the show. Let's get in here, guys. Let's get in here, yeah! Before starting, I do think it's necessary to point out that originally, Omni-Man's encounter with President Lincoln occurred in issue 11, and Mark's encounter with Omni-Man occurred in issue 12. This is early. The issues are not very long. Right off the bat, right when we get into it, it's got these new two guard guys, security guards, and they're standing in front of the White House, and neither of them are actually important. They don't matter at all. But I can tell you what does matter is this scene introduces the Guardians of the Globe. Originally, they were not introduced in the comic until it was time to kill them off. In issue 7, it introduces every single one of them and then kills them off in a single page. This scene also introduces the powers of the Guardians of the Globe in a little bit more of a cool manner. It isn't really that cool in the comics. They kind of just all get a phone call and they show up and die. I'd also like to note that the Green Ghost in this show has been gender swapped. Before, he was a man, and also this show doesn't really mention anything about this Green Ghost being the successor to a previous dead Green Ghost. But it also doesn't confirm that she isn't. Throughout the episode, she kind of acts like an amateur. She doesn't really do anything, especially in the Omni-Man fight when she gets punched in the skull without having done anything, dying instantly. I mean, what kind of pro does that? Am I right? Fellow pros? Please fucking shoot me. Originally, the story just started with Mark living as a regular teenager with a regular life. And then he's at his stupid, shitty, part-time Burger King job. And all of a sudden, he's got superpowers. In the show, it's a little bit more drawn out. Now, he's a whiny fucking asshole about everything, really, honestly. His parents not having powers, not being a superhero, his parents, no superpowers being had by him. The next scene of Mark going to school with no powers is also a new addition. It also introduces William, Mark's best friend from the comics, who is now much different from the comics. Now he's openly gay. He already realizes his sexuality and embraces it. Before, he didn't even realize he was gay until he entered a gay relationship, and he was like, huh, this seems about right. Almost everything about his character has been altered for the show. He's less masculine. It seems like he might be doing better in school, or at least that he cares more about school. He doesn't really whine about stuff like people calling him Will anymore. He even seems to be smarter than the William from the comic book. Good for him. He's smart. I mean, he seems like it. He's actually not. He's really not. But at least he can make it look like it. This scene also introduces Amber, who is completely different from the comics. Originally, she was introduced just handing Mark a note and see you later. And the note says, oh, you should call my phone number. Instead, she is the worst. Amber is probably my least favorite character out of this entire show. And frankly, I hope that they don't even attempt to adapt any more of the storylines involving Amber in future seasons. Just write her off. Just get rid of her. This scene also introduces Todd. It's showing him being an asshole, being a bully. You know, he's not a cool dude, and he beats up Mark. Oh no, what a bad guy. Man, I wonder what he did in the comics. Nothing. In the comics, he was only ever a name drop. Originally, there was a plotline in the comic book where one of Mark's teachers was taking students that he didn't like, that he thought were like the kids who made his son commit suicide, and he turned them into human bombs and put them in a mall and let them blow up. And this whole plot has been cut completely from the show, which means Todd gets to live. Good job, Todd. You managed to not succumb to the writing. Now on to the scene where Mark gets his powers. It is lifted straight from the comic books. Yes, in every instance of this guy's existence, he gets his powers while throwing a bag of trash into the trash can and accidentally rocketing it into London. One thing I want to point out is that Nolan and his family live much more wealthily than in the comic book. You'd think that this change would be done in the hindsight that if Nolan's the strongest superhero on the planet, Cecil would be paying him a lot of money to do that, which is what happens with him and Mark in the comic. But later in the show, Cecil says he's never taken orders, which means he doesn't work for him. The explanation for the better house and everything is just Nolan's books sold better. This also means that Nolan doesn't have an earpiece or a beeper for Cecil to call him. He just calls him on the phone, which that's fine, I guess. But it also means that in the finale, when they're recording the conversation, if you could call it that, it's a little bit more intense than that. When they're recording the conversation, it's not just recording all of it. They only record the parts where they're standing still and they can get a drone to come in and listen to what's happening. One thing that's really stuck out to me in the show is that Mark struggles with flying a lot. He's not very good at it. Originally in the comics, he got his superpowers, went and got a costume, and then just started going. In the show, there's this whole new plot line throughout this episode where Mark doesn't really know if he can do it. Don't worry though, he can. There's 7 more episodes. This change also results in Nolan questioning whether Mark can actually pull off the superhero gig. In the comic books, Nolan praises him, saying that there is no reason for him to be as good at superheroics as he is. The show also adds a new scene introducing the costume before leading into the original scene where he introduces the costume. I'd like to point out that the costume actually has some minor changes from the original. Now his gloves end at 2 different points instead of being one straight loop around his arm, and they removed the black patch from underneath his knee that took out a section of his boots. This patch was filled in by art later in the comics, around 20-something issues in, but it's obviously a much better decision to just be away with it now. The scene ends with Mark fighting Kilcannon, beating the shit out of him, telling him that he's invincible. Originally in the comics, it was just some regular bank robbers. They were just guys who were running away. And he's just like, I wouldn't try resisting, buddy. I'm invincible. I can't be hurt. They can't hurt me with you can't hurt me with your bullets. Idiot, dummy head. Kilcannon is used later in the season as well as another just punching bag for Mark to fight throughout the scenes where he's doing some stuff, but it's just not as important. Originally, Kill Cannon was important in the comics. That was a joke. In the comic book, he was introduced pretty late into the series as Adam Eve's extremely lame nemesis, being defeated by Mark in a single punch. Damn, that's gotta sting, am I right? Am I right? I fucking hate this. Going back to the Guardians of the Globe, the scene of them being summoned actually changes some of the stuff of what they were doing before they actually get summoned. And the sequence is originally straight out of issue 7. Red Rush, President Lincoln, Aquarius, and Darkwing all have completely unaltered versions of the scene. The only alterations would be in slight dialogue changes, stuff that really doesn't matter. Now, War Woman's scene has changed. Originally, she's shown in her girlfriend's apartment, staying over, waking up, and then she fights a god, and then she leaves because she got summoned. There is no explanation for pretty much any of this, and it doesn't matter. And you know what else doesn't matter? The new scene that they put in. You gotta be fucking kidding me. The new scene that they put in. It also doesn't matter. She's talking to some guy or her assistant woman person, and she's there, and then she leaves. This scene, honestly, I mean, they probably just didn't want to animate some more bullshit. The Martian is now shown improving upon his stretching abilities with an original child companion person. No clue why the hell he's talking to this stupid little girl. But it's whatever. And then he gets summoned and he goes. Green Ghost is now shown doing work as a photographer, cutting the shoot right in the middle so that she can go answer the summons as the Green Ghost. Originally, the two of them actually shared a scene. This was the scene where it was explained that Green Ghost was the successor to the previous Green Ghost, when the Martian says, "Oh, I know my friend chose you for a reason, and I believe that you can do this." Here's a spoiler alert. No. The reason of no being because when we lead into the Guardians versus Omni-Man scene, Omni-Man slaughters them. However, this is a much more drawn out and violent version of the scene from the comics. In the comics, a single page was dedicated to wiping out the entire staff of the Guardians minus President Lincoln, who notes that he didn't like Omni-Man ever. In the show, it's a little bit more clear that he trusted Omni-Man, and he's absolutely betrayed by the revelation that Omni-Man will punch people he doesn't like. That sounds a lot more obvious when you say it like that, but Omni-Man's a traitor. Really, that's what he's surprised about. There's also a much bigger difference in that Omni-Man takes a lot of damage himself in this scene. Originally, he never took any damage, and he left on a dime's notice. It took him less than a minute, and he was gone, and the deed was done. Now, he gets knocked out. He's found with the Guardians. This change results in him being found with the Guardians and suspected as the killer. Originally in the comics, no one suspected anything. The 4 issues passed, no one figured out who did it, and then Omni-Man revealed it, and it was over. Because this whole new plot with Omni-Man being suspected is added to the show, I'm actually going to take the liberty of not pointing out any more of the scenes throughout the whole rest of the show involving Omni-Man and being suspected by Cecil, Debbie, Damien Darkblood, who, by the way, was a joke character in the comics. He's a little bit more important now. I'm not going to be mentioning any more of that because it would get redundant really fucking fast. Hang on with me, though. There are still plenty of differences in this season to cover. In case you are wondering, no, issue 7 was not this early. The show at this point is somewhere in issue 2, probably, if we're being completely honest. Omni-Man has just made the decision to kill the Guardians much earlier. Originally, he waited until Invincible proved he was able to actually get stuff done, and then he goes for it. Now, as soon as he knows that Invincible has Viltrumite powers, it's time to get the deed done. Due to Omni-Man's mistake letting the Guardians beat the fucking shit out of him, there's a new scene where Cecil finds him, right? I'm not talking about Omni-Man. I'm talking about Cecil now. Cecil was originally completely behind the scenes all the way until issue 13, after Mark and Omni-Man had already fought each other. Now, Cecil's a lot more of a presence in the first few events of the show. In fact, Invincible knows all about him. Invincible shouldn't even know he exists. Cecil is just that top secret. Now, if you're a superhero or you know someone who's a superhero, you probably fucking heard of Cecil. He's not that secret anymore. He's just another guy. Cecil's introduction also puts Mark under Cecil's orders far earlier than in the comics. This cuts out the portion of the comics where Mark lives a normal life, going on dates with Amber, going to school, doing normal kid stuff, and then whenever he's got free time, he goes out and does Invincible stuff. Now, because of Omni-Man's training and Cecil's constant demands, Mark is all of a sudden never available. This was supposed to be a new thing that happened to add strain to Mark and Amber's already existing relationship. Now it just adds strain to the relationship, which pretty much never starts and also should be cut from the fucking show already. There's also been a change to delay the public in the series, knowing that the Guardians are dead. In the comics, they just told everyone instantly. Originally, only a few days later does the President Lincoln come back from the dead and come beat the shit out of Omni-Man. Instead, we got 6 more months of stuff to happen. Whoa! Big massive change. There's a lot of time in between the Immortals revivals. President Lincoln's revivals. Sorry, forgive me. In the Flaxan's first invasion, pulled from issue 3, they have now opted to invade a city instead of a random desert. This adds scenes of civilians getting killed, and also the teen team coming in and saving the day. Originally, Mark and Omni-Man fought the Flaxans in the desert for a full hour before they started aging rapidly, and they left. And it really wasn't that big of a deal until later. This is also now the teen team's first appearance in the show. Originally, they first appeared when Mark was flying around in his pajamas. He ran into one of the Mauler twins, punched him, and the teen team was also there. Now, they're shown to be a little bit more of a big deal. In the comics, I'm kind of under the impression that no one really knows who any of them are until they become Guardians. Also, the Flaxan's second attack is now much sooner than before. It only happens, like a day later or something like that? Who cares? Flaxan's second attack is also much earlier than in the comics. Originally, it occurred in issue 14, which would be placing it as the first thing that happened in season 2. But of course, they didn't want to do that. It seems that this show has taken the approach of taking some of these ongoing plot lines where recurring enemies will come back and do stuff and shoving them all into one episode, making it a little bit more memorable, I suppose. Originally, the Flaxan's second visit to Earth was actually just to capture Omni-Man, who spends the rest of the day spending 10 months in the Flaxan universe wrecking house. This is now shown in the show in a third Flaxan invasion, which I'm not going to be bothered to find where that would have been in the comics, because this is just completely different from anything that originally happened anyway. When the second attack begins, Rexplode comments that just like the Flaxans, the teen team's bones can break. This seems to me like a nod to a panel later in the comic where, upon seeing enemies retreating, Rex comments, "Less broken bones for me." Adam Eve is now shown using a lot more of her power's dangerous capabilities. Before, she kept it kind of tame. Now, when she goes on the offensive, it's like, oh, she fights people too. That's, yes. Now there is a scene where Alan visits Earth. I fucking love Alan the Alien. By the way, Alan the Alien is probably one of the funniest characters ever to be introduced to anything. I'm very excited to see what they do with him in this show. Alan's arrival to Earth is pulled straight from issue 2, and also it is no longer explained that Nolan can hold his breath for 2 weeks, which is a really weird thing to do. I feel like you actually very much could have, left that line in, oh, I can hold my breath in for 2 weeks. It's not that hard. Come on. Alan now thinks that Mark is Nolan when they start fighting. Originally, he just thought that the champion had been replaced after 15 years, and it just took him a long time. In the show, it would seem that Alan is a little bit dumber. The Guardians of the Globe's funeral is now no longer populated by costume superheroes, instead being a lot more, somber looking, I guess. Makes sense. It is a funeral. You don't just show up in your really bright fucking skin-tight suit to a funeral. That's just disrespectful, right? This scene also has a noticeable absence of Savage Dragon and the Mauler twins. Mauler twins are in prison this time right now. So yeah, that makes sense. And Savage Dragon is just, he belongs to someone else. The scene also removes Black Samson's butler attacking in the new power suit and being defeated and thrown in prison. Probably because it's unnecessary. And also they didn't want to get a voice actor for Black Samson's butler. A second funeral at a private location is a new addition. That did not happen before. I'd also like to note that in the show, Nolan is terrible at concealing how little he cared for the Guardians. In the comic, everyone's convinced. He is heartbroken over this. His friends just died. In the show, he talks about pizza and shit. How the fuck did this guy not spoil half the series in this show? This guy's just dumb. Mark calling Amber is now a little bit more awkward of a scene, but it just leads into the same garbage it did before. Honestly, it's fine. Originally, Adam Eve saw Rexplode and Dupli-Kate cheating on her from across the room. She noticed, and then she left without either of them really noticing that she had seen them. Now she straight up walks in on them, and all three Kates are talking to her, and Rex is talking to her. Oh my god, this scene is crazy. Adam Eve was also originally a lot more heartbroken by this, going straight to Invincible for comfort, crying on his shoulder and whatnot, and Debbie getting pissed that there are girls in his room. Oh my god, there's so much stuff happening. Instead, now Adam Eve is just really mad at Rexplode. As well as this, Rex hates Invincible for no fucking reason.
Didn't need your help, asshole.
In the show. I don't understand why. In the comic book, Invincible doesn't like Rex, but he's still concerned about his safety, and that is all there is to their stance on one another. Instead, Rex just, fuck you, guy. Why? You're the asshole. The tryouts for the Guardians of the Globe are now 1v1 matches, where whoever wins gets in. This is stupid. Originally, there were dozens more participants, and they fought robots, and Robot, the character Robot, would analyze who he thought was doing the best job and let him in to the Guardians of the Globe. And also, Fight Force was not a thing. Capes Incorporated made up half of the library of people who auditioned. And they're less of a team and they're more like a fucking superhero company. I don't know, they don't really explain it. Shrinking Ray is now much younger and gender swapped, more than likely in an effort to make the character more appealing, relatable, interesting. In the comic book, Shrinking Ray is lame as fuck. Originally, Eve didn't even try out for the Guardians of the Globe. She just left. This time, she gets on the team, and then she's like, oh, other people who are capable of getting on the team got on the team even though I knew they would totally make it on the team? Oh, I can't do that. Fuck are you talking about? Back to Cecil interrupting Mark's date. When Cecil does this, he's calling him off to fight Doc Seismic, who he originally fought in issue 10. This is now done with Adam Eve, and it's a lot more dramatic. Originally, Mark just shows up, beats him up, and it's pretty much over. Now there's a whole cool fight scene, and I gotta be honest, it's a good fucking scene. I welcome the expansion of this fight. At the same time as this, the show mentions that Omni-Man was fighting a kaiju that had him on the ropes. This is new, and also it's coming back later. There's now a new scene of the Mauler twins escaping the prison and one of them dying. Holy shit, that's intense. That did not happen in the comics. Originally, the first time one of the Mauler twins died, the other one got a big old scar over his face. And instead of going to the lab and immediately making a new clone to be on the exact same terms with as the last guy, he makes a new clone, says, hey, I got this scar on my face and you don't. I'm King Mauler. And the other Mauler poisons him and makes his own clone. And they go right back to it. This is probably going to get cut from the show since they've already gone through the effort of showing that Mauler twins can die. There's now an added scene of an ancient mummy getting fucking stopped from invading the world or whatever. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It happens because Mark is flying by. This was not in the comics, and I am honestly curious as to whether or not they will do anything with this later in the show. Nolan also tells Mark that he needs to exercise much sooner than Mark figures that out in the comic. Nolan now has a story about his parents dying and him being lost for a while. This is entirely new. In the comics, he never really mentions his parents because he doesn't know them. The Mars mission is lifted straight out of the comics from issue 18, obviously occurring after Omni-Man has already left the planet. I hope you don't mind if I happen to change outfits entirely in the middle of the video. I don't mean to. It just happens sometimes. Episode 5 follows a storyline from issue 19, and it follows it pretty close, kinda. All the stuff before Titan actually meeting Invincible is original. Invincible fighting Elephant is not original. That's... oh shit. I need to step out. All of the Titan scenes where he's going around doing stuff, and especially getting the little quantum fucking battery upgrade thing, whatever the hell it is, that's all new stuff added in before. Originally, Titan just destroyed some buildings that were condemned. You know, they were about to be ripped down, and Invincible shows up and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? And Titan's like, wanna go get this machine head guy? Now it's a little more expanded upon, but it's not too much of a variation from the comic book, if we're being completely honest. When we get to the actual fight, I'd like to note that Magnatac, President Lincoln, and Bulletproof are all three missing from this scene. They were originally there. President Lincoln was the leader of the Guardians of the Globe again. Bulletproof got his ass kicked instead of Monster Girl. And Magnatac, I don't know what his powers are. He was one of the bad guys though. He beat up Titan. Invincible also gets his ass fucking handed to him in this episode. Originally, he struggled with Battle Beast, but Battle Beast was done with him before he decided to chop up his guts and stuff. That's definitely new. This episode also takes the time to make Amber and Eve closer friends. Originally in the comic book, they just never gave a shit about each other, and I think they talked like twice. It doesn't matter. Their relationship did not matter, and now in the show, they actually know each other. That would be cool, I guess, if Amber was a decent character. Black Samson's coma, the recovery after his battle with Battle Beast. Battle with Battle Beast. That one really didn't come out right. His recovery after his fight with Battle Beast is now much shorter. Before, he was out for months. he was just knocked the hell out. If he woke up at around the same time that he would have in the comics, he'd be waking up at the end of the next season, like during the season finale. He also got his powers back because of waking up from his recovery and going to a coma, whatever. He got his powers back from it, which did happen in the comics, but because he had been out for so much longer in the comics, he woke up fucking supercharged. He was the strongest planet on the hero by far. I meant to say it like that. Of course, it only lasted for 2 minutes, and then he went right back to normal, and, I mean, here we are now. What can I say? Episode 6 is a really interesting one to me, because it combines the entire Reanimen plotline from a very broad range of issues. This episode combines the events of William and Mark going to college for a tour of the college before they actually go there in issue 6, being confronted by a Reanimen and watching it kill itself. It was also a dead guy. It wasn't Doug Cheston. That guy's new. This also did lead to William finding out Mark had superpowers. The second issue that it's combining is issue 20, where Mark and Amber were walking together on the campus as they already attended there, and they were attacked by another Reanimen, and she's like, "Oh, you freaking abandoned me, you're a jerk face, you're an asshole," and he's like, "No, that's not what happened." And then there's a whole plot line where he goes and he apologizes, and she's like, "Oh, you're a superhero? Oh, that makes sense." Unlike the show scene where, what does she say?
"Fly away, flyboy," or "take the stairs. I really don't give a shit."
Yeah, who the fuck wrote this character? What are you doing? Stop. The last issues being combined into this are issues 36 and 37. After months of Rick being missing, Invincible and William decide, well, maybe we should do something about this at some point. So William dresses up as a homeless guy, gets kidnapped by a Reaniman, and Invincible follows him, and they find Rick, and, whoosh, oh my gosh, it's Rick. And he's like, "Willem?" That's straight from the comics, and then you better believe that the D.A. Sinclaire bitch slap is straight from the comics.
Science! Saving the human race from disease!
The first of these events, these issues, issue 6, was actually also when William and Rick first met each other. And William did not like Rick, but in the show, they're already quite intimate. So, Rick doesn't gotta worry about the "don't call me Will" speech. D.A. Sinclair's introduction in this show is also so much fucking worse than in the comics. He stands up in class, he's being a fucking jackass, right? And then he gets owned by Amber and Rick, and he leaves all mad. Originally in the comics, he walks into class late, the professor's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And he's like, "Shut the hell up. I could teach this class if I wanted to. I'm sitting down so I can be in the class, obviously." And he, what does the professor do about it? Jack shit. Oh, what? What a fucking cool guy, am I right? Not really. I mean, he's a fucking piece of shit, but at least he's in a little bitch who just gets the shit roasted out of him every day. Also, this isn't really something I need to point out. The suit analysis scene it's a little interesting. Obviously, it never happened in the comics because there was nothing to analyze. Nolan simply cleaned his suit and no one ever realized that he killed the Guardians. But in this new scene, it is mentioned that there are flakes from War Woman's armor on the suit, which makes no sense, but it was an intense battle. We'll just say, fine, that happened. And then Art tells Debbie that there are 3 rips from Darkwing's throwing devices. But if you watch the scene, he never got hit by any of those. And those rips weren't there before. This is just straight up the writers not paying attention. The story now takes a long step back into before issue 12. We're back! We're back in the safe zone, guys! Goes back to the gravediggers. Someone found Immortal's hidden, buried body, which, why even have a second funeral if people are going to figure it out anyway? Whatever. This scene is taken straight from the comics, only now the stepson who likes the Beatles is there, and also his friend didn't just read it on the internet, he read it on Reddit. So that makes it really fucking, yeah, everything on Reddit is true. Holy shit. This man, this beast, what kind of environment has this guy been living in? I'm gonna note now that Adam Eve leaving her parents' house and living in Africa or whatever happened way later in the comics, and also I never once cared enough about it the entire time I was watching to decide I wanted to figure out at what point she does that, because it does not matter. And also in the show, she doesn't go to Africa. She just goes to like somewhere in the woods far away. The plot where Robot gets the Mauler twins to develop a new Kid Rexplode body for him so he and Monster Girl can be mutual pedophiles together. Up top, guys, haha, you're fucking sick, is from the comics. It's from the comics. From issues 30 to 34, it took place in the background of the story, just like in this. The Mauler's struggling to get the transfer to work because of Rudy's abnormal brain is not in the comics. Probably because in the comics, he isn't this weird, like, completely just non-human looking motherfucker. In the comics, he's just like a weird, gross baby. Also, because of Omni-Man doing stuff, in this version, Robot doesn't successfully arrest the Maulers. In the comic book, it was pretty short and sweet. He got in his new body, Robot tried to arrest him, they break Robot, and he's like, maybe you shouldn't have had your little friend try to get us, guy, because we just killed Robot from the Guardians of the Globe. You look so stupid right now. And he's like, you look fucking dumb. I'm a robot. And what? This guy isn't controlling Robot? He is Robot? Well, that's crazy. I sure hope he doesn't have a 36 drone that comes out of the... Oh shit! What? One thing I'd like to note is that when Rudy's talking to the Maulers, he actually says that they are both clones, which nothing in the show confirms that they're both clones. It very well could have been the original who survived. But they also mention that not knowing who's the clone and who isn't always turns out bad, which makes me think that maybe in the show, one of the Maulers already died at the same time as one getting scarred, and the King Mauler and the poisoning stuff already happened in the show, just before the show actually started, and they won't be doing that plot. Of course, there's every chance that they are doing that plot, and I've just spoiled the same thing for you twice. You're welcome. One thing that I didn't mention earlier, because I didn't think it was important enough when it was mentioned in the show to put it in my script, is that Monster Girl's age was changed from 29 to 25. Really weird. I mean, what's a 4-year difference? Why would you even put that in the show? Who cares? You could just say 29. You could just rip it straight out of the comics. No one would care. Now, Rudy states that he is 30 years old. No one ever knew what his age was in the comics. Now he's 30. So why would you turn down Monster Girl's age? They'd be practically the same fucking age. Why would you even change it? There is also a new scene depicting Donald's tragic death. And this scene blew my fucking mind, because when he grabbed into him and blood started coming out, I was like, holy shit. Donald isn't a robot? That's right. Originally, in the comic book, Donald was a robot the entire time. It wasn't like a big reveal or anything. It was just something that had happened to him. You know, he was blown up, killed in the field or whatever. All that they could save was his brain, and so they slapped his brain in a robot and just let him keep going. Which I am going to go ahead and theorize that that's exactly what they're going to do with him. They're going to find his brains out in the crew. Is Donald dead? Is Donald actually like dead? Oh man. There's also a new subplot where Mark wants to quit being a superhero for a little bit, and he also keeps it up past his fight with his father in the show. What is up with this guy? What is up with this show version of Mark where he doesn't give a shit about saving people? Why? The show uses the opportunity of Omni-Man being discovered and the whole subplot where they need to keep Mark and Omni-Man away from each other, also gives them the chance to throw in some Reanimen and bring back Hail Mary, the kaiju that Omni-Man defeated in episode 2, I hope. This fight with Hail Mary is also kind of it from the comic books, in a very loose sense. Originally, it was just a new kaiju that was killed by Omni-Man right before President Lincoln came back and attacked him. Mark saw that on the news, and he heads over and shows up just in time to watch Omni-Man. If you know what I'm saying. Which, by the way, that action is actually straight from the comics, and Mark seeing him is just like in the comics. It's for Mark's first very traumatic time seeing a Viltrumite in their natural state, soaked in blood. And now for the final episode, which has the most brutal changes in the entire series, by far. Right at the beginning, it starts with Mark attacking Nolan, thinking that he's being controlled by someone. This wasn't in the comics. In the comics, it's kind of straight to the point. It talks about what Viltrum was actually like. And that scene is in the show. Pretty much one for one. By the way, this episode was written by Robert Kirkman, so I guess I should note now that, I mean, my man knew he popped off with issues 12 and 13. Most of the dialogue in this episode is straight from the comic book. Mark is now much sadder about this revelation than in the comic book. Before, he was simply outraged, and he pretty much instantly challenged Omni-Man to a fight, which would be to the death, probably. I mean, you're kind of talking to an alien conqueror. There is also a line where Nolan says that he loves Debbie, but as a pet, which is kind of a change from the line where he says that she is a little more than a pet. And it also cuts the most brutal line in the series. Your mother means nothing to me. That is a world-shattering line. When he says that, it's like everything you fucking knew from the last 11 issues is just out the window. Because you don't even know who this fucking guy is. It's world-shattering. Instead, it's just exactly what you already knew it was. Omni-Man doesn't think very highly of humans. He makes it too obvious in the show. I don't like that. Personally, I think it was a massive mistake to remove this from the episode. There is now a new scene where Mark tries to save some pilots and Nolan decides to traumatize him and all that. None of that was in the comic book. Originally, when the fight first started, Omni-Man threw one punch, throwing Invincible through 2 buildings, collapsing them near instantly. The process of this is now a lot more traumatic for Mark. He's given just enough time to process what has happened, try to save people, lose all of them, and then be confronted by his father once again. The subway train scene is also from the comic book, but without the brutalization of everyone on a fucking train, one by one, using Mark's own body. Holy shit. Omni-Man in the show is just a straight fucked up sadistic dude. In the comic book, he just wants to prove to his son that he's a fucking idiot by knocking some sense into him. It just so happens to not work that way. I'd also like to note that Omni-Man is slowly getting more and more ruthless with all of his attacks throughout the episode. The intensity of each punch he throws is more than the last. In the comic book, he just went straight for it, and the battle was probably like 3 minutes. Once they're on the mountain where Omni-Man leaves, originally he showed no sign of stopping. This whole new scene where he's lying down next to him and he's remembering the baseball game, all that is new and also entirely unnecessary. In the comic book, it's more, he punches him and he's like, what will you have in 500 years? I'd have you, Dad. And he's like, okay, guy. Oh, I don't want to kill my kid. And he's gone. He's gone like that. There is zero sign of him cutting it out or anything like that. He is gone on a dime's notice, barely sparing Mark's life. And now, jumping into the peachy territory of issue 13. We did it, guys! We got past the big one! The scene of the world being shocked by the battle now comes with news dialogue explaining that no one knows what's going on. Originally, in the comic book, it took them a second to clarify that nobody knows the reason and nobody's secret identity is out. None of that. This scene also adds the Maulers being arrested because this version robot can't do fucking anything. When Mark wakes up and talks to Cecil in the hospital, it is now less clear whether or not he's going to keep on being a superhero. Obviously he is, because that's what the fucking show's about, but now he actually questions it. This scene was also originally Cecil and Mark's first meeting, and Cecil is really just in it because he needs a replacement for Omni-Man immediately, and Mark is just thrown into a whole new world. And you know what Mark says? He's just like, alright man, that sounds good to me. There's also a new scene of the Guardians cleaning up the blood stain in the Guardians headquarters. This was originally not in the comics because the cleaning staff in the comic book actually paid attention to the walls. The scene of Mark and his mom getting home was originally a lot more depressing. In this one, Mark's just relieved to be back. Debbie goes up and she starts crying after pretending she's okay. In the comics, they walk in and neither of them are okay, and that's how it is. There is also a new scene where Mark forms a little group of people who know his secret identity, and they go to Burger Mart, and Robert drops the opportunity to adapt the scene where his old manager comes and harasses him at the table. This also leads into the near one-to-one version of the scene where Alan visits Earth and warns Mark about the Viltrumites. Of course, Mark already knows, and the season is over. And that wraps things up. This video was, this video is a process to make, and it's probably going to be a process to edit all this. Holy. Before I end this video, I want to say a couple things. I am going to be doing more videos of future Invincible seasons if they actually come out, because I fucking love this series. I love the comic book. I'm hyped up. I'm ready to go. I'd like to ask you if you could please like and subscribe. That would be cool and stuff. And before I end this video, I want to make one prediction for what the opening scene of season 2 is going to be. And if I'm right, then I'm the fucking best. And if I'm not right, then pretend I never said this. Next season is going to open with Mark and Nolan ruling over Earth as the Viltrumite conquerors. And I'm going to give you zero more context than that.
You don't seem to understand. Earth isn't yours to conquer. After 500 years!
You, Dad. I still have